Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to Joe Stunner Boxing. At the weekend, 16th of November, there is a unification fight in the cruiserweight division between Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez, 33 years old, southpaw, 6'2.5", from Mexico, 46 wins, 30 by KO, 1 defeat to Dimitri Bivol, no draws, and Billam Smith of England, 20 wins, 13 KOs, 1 defeat. The defeat was avenged. It was to Richard Riakporhe. He's 6'3", 34 years old. Now, I thought both these guys were younger than they actually are. But no, 33 and 34 respectively. But I honestly think that, both these guys are sort of young for their age. There ain't a lot of miles on the clock. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, okay, Billam Smith's only had 21 fights. Fair enough. But Zurdo's had 47. How can you say there aren't a lot of miles on the clock? Well, quite simply, he's beaten up most of the people that he's faced and dominated them and hasn't taken a tremendous amount of punishment. Even the Dimitri Bivol defeat, which was 3 fights ago, you wouldn't say he was beaten up. He was completely outboxed. But, considering he's been a pro since 2009, 15 years ago, can you mention any fights where where it's been nip and tuck and give and take and all the rest of it? I can't think of that many. I can't think of many at all. But anyway, Unbelievably, Zurdo Ramirez is a former super middleweight champ. He held the WBO title. How on earth he made 12 stone, I have no idea whatsoever. He did have one super middleweight fight, which was very competitive, which was to Jesse Hart. He won a majority decision. But apart from that, I can't really think of anything too taxing, to be honest with you. He moved up to light heavy. Got found out by Dimitri Bivol. Well, I mean, maybe that's exaggeration because Bivol, as we know, is extremely good. But then, having failed at light heavy, he decided I'll go all the way up to cruiserweight. And his first cruiserweight fight was against another former light heavy, which was Joe Smith Jr. He won a unanimous 10-round decision. And then he fought for the WBA title against Arsene Goulamirian, who was undefeated in 27. No draws, no defeats, 27 wins. But inactive. Goulamirian's inactive. And he easily beat Goulamirian. I thought Goulamirian might do, sort of a bit better than he did do. But in actual fact, Zurdo kind of dominated him pretty much on most of the rounds. Now, that was his last fight, and that was in March of this year. The Smith fight was just over a year ago, October 2023. And that brings us to Billam Smith, who, has, less than half the fights, even though he's a year older than Ramirez does. And I think it's fair to say Smith is an overachiever. He turned pro in 2017, so that's 8 years after Ramirez. And on the way up to the top, he lost a split decision over 10 to Richard Riakporhe in 2019. Riakporhe was 9-0 at the time, and I think Chris was sort of similar. It was a battle of unbeatens. No shame, whoever lost, not a problem. It was a very close fight, actually. I mean, I thought Riakporhe won it, but split decision, yeah, I can understand that. But then he came back and he had a couple of decent wins. Vasil Dukar is probably better than his record suggests, or was at the time anyway. He stopped Craig Glover in 5 rounds. I mean, that was for the vacant Commonwealth cruiserweight title, but no one thought he would get to world level. I certainly didn't. Even when he fought Tommy McCarthy the first time for the EBU title, the Commonwealth, and the British they were on the line. I think the British was vacant. And he beat Tommy on a split decision. I thought he did win that fight, but McCarthy was looking pretty good. Definitely had something left at the time. He then fought McCarthy in a rematch 2 fights later and stopped him in 8 rounds, knocked him out. And that was for the Commonwealth and EBU titles. Then he fought Isaac Chamberlain. That was a good fight. That was for the Commonwealth and EBU. It was a 12-round unanimous decision. Chamberlain, as we know, can fight a fair bit. And then he got his world title tilt and was expected to lose. And that was against the previously undefeated Lawrence Okoli. What an absolute car crash of a fight this was. And yet, despite the incessant octopus-like grappling from Okoli, who had all sorts of points taken off him. I mean, I think he had 2 points taken off him and he was knocked down, was it 3 or 4 times, Okoli. He lost that fight hands down. It was a majority decision, unbelievably, because I thought Billam Smith won this, wide. Even with all those knockdowns and points taken off, it was still only a majority decision. Someone had it 112, which kind of says it all, but that basically means he thought Okoli won 8 rounds in that fight to Billam Smith's 4. How he arrived at that conclusion, I don't know. But luckily the right man got it. So Chris, against all odds, against all expectations, became WBO Cruiserweight champ. And he remains the WBO Cruiserweight champ. He made his first defence against Mateusz Masternak, tough veteran of 52 fights with 47 wins. And Masternak gave him plenty to think about. In fact, Billam Smith, as his trainer Shane McGuigan confirmed, got away from the game plan, wasn't boxing according to instructions, and in fact ended up stopping Masternak with I think Masternak had a rib injury. There was a couple of good body punches in the 7th, and Masternak didn't come out for the 8th, I think it was. Or was it the other way? Yeah, it was the 8th. Yeah. But he didn't look great in that fight, Billam Smith. He did not look great. And that's why when the rematch with Riakporhe was mooted, a lot of us thought Riakporhe might win. I think I picked Riakporhe to win that one. Not with any great confidence, but I thought he's done it once, he can do it again. And I wasn't impressed with Billam Smith against Masternak. In actual fact, Billam Smith, that might well be his best performance of his career against Riakporhe. And Riakporhe looked poor. He looked tight at the weight, just as Okoli was. It just wasn't very, very impressive. I think he had a point taken off as well, just to add insult to injury towards the end of the fight. So we've got the orthodox Billam Smith, the southpaw Zurdo. Is Zurdo the best fighter that Billam Smith has faced? I would say probably. I fully expect Ramirez to be on his game, even though he is the guy's a cruiserweight now, a former super middleweight, now he's a cruiserweight. He still doesn't look like he's got an ounce of fat on him. He looks big and naturally big, powerful, physically strong. And even though Billam Smith is the one who's, the career cruiserweight, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Zurdo matched him for physical strength and was able to, get up close and maul him and kind of bully him a little bit. It's not to say that Billam Smith is weak. He's not. He's not the biggest of cruiserweights, but he's not a small guy either. He carries the weight well. So who do I think is going to win this fight? Well, Zurdo, he's against Gullamarian. Zurdo, he started relatively quickly. He's not. I wouldn't say he was a fast starter, but he likes to take the first couple of rounds to sort of warm up, get the engine running. And Gullamarian tried to move a bit, but once Zurdo found his rhythm and his range, he was able to control Gullamarian quite easily. And Gullamarian, he's not a young man. See, a lot of these cruiserweights are in their 30s. Gullamarian, I think, is about 36, 37 now. But he'd been inactive, and it kind of showed. I don't think Gullamarian had fought for about 18 months. And I don't think he'd fought at all in 20 or 21. So he really, really had been inactive. That is not true of Billam Smith. I think for Billam Smith to win this fight, he's got to start early. And he's not necessarily the fastest starter himself. I think he needs to avoid getting up close and personal with Zurdo. I think that's Zurdo's fight. I think anything that is an exchange, anything that's based on physicality rather than skills, is going to probably go in Zurdo's favour. I think Zurdo's skills, they're not non-existent, but he was found out against Bivol. I mean, again, I repeat, Bivol is a terrific fighter, and that was down at light heavyweight. But a lot of people were saying, oh, Zurdo's so big, Zurdo's so physically strong. And skills, as they say, pay the bills. I predicted Bivol to beat Zurdo based on skills, even though but Bivol is a much smaller man than Zurdo. Even though Zurdo's a former 12-stone champion, he looked gigantic at light heavyweight, and he doesn't look small at cruiserweight. So if I was Billam Smith, I'd be thinking, okay, I'm going to work on the skills. I'm going to look at the Bivol fight, maybe get kind of a blueprint off that. Or obviously, I'm not the same. He's not the same as Bivol. He's not as good as Bivol, but he is much bigger, much more physical. And I would be looking to box Zurdo from the off. Don't let him get his feet under the table. Don't let him get, comfy. Keep banging, everything off the jab, angles, Billam Smith does everything well and nothing brilliant, if you know what I mean. But in terms of skills, I'd say he's better than Zurdo. I'd say Zurdo, even though he's had a couple of fights at this weight and they've both gone the distance, I'd say he probably, when I say he has power, it's more cumulative. And Billam Smith has shown a good jaw, but I wouldn't be hanging it out in front of Zurdo. I think Billam Smith needs to forget about power, box, everything behind the jab, box quite. When I say start fast, I don't mean, go hell for leather. I mean, constantly from the word go, you bang that jab in, bang, 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 right hand, maybe the odd body punch or whatever. But the moment Zurdo gets up close, you spin off, spin out of the pocket, give him some angles. Don't let him get set. Don't let Zurdo get any kind of offensive rhythm going. Okay. Now, if he can do that, he can win. But can he do that over 12 rounds? By the way, this card is in Riyadh. I should have mentioned that. This is another one of those Riyadh cards. A very good card indeed. Not a pay-per-view either, which is a good thing. At least I don't think it is. I bloody hope it's not anyway. I don't think it is. Can Billam Smith outbox Zurdo for 12 rounds? The answer is yes, he can, but will he? Will he do it? I have a feeling that Gilberto Ramirez might come on strong in the last third of the fight, because his gas tank, his engine throughout his whole career, regardless of what weight he's at, is really quite impressive. And Billam Smith, he hasn't shown any sort of frailty in the gas tank department either, but it's a very difficult one to pick, this. Very difficult. I'm going to go with my heart rather than my head, which is something I don't often do. But I've just got a hunch that Zurdo might catch up with Chris late and stop him, come from behind to stop him in the sort of 10th, 11th round. I don't know why I'm saying that, because I can quite easily see a scenario where Billam Smith does outbox Zurdo. But no, I'm going to go with the old heart, go with the old ticker rather than the old grey matter. Never an advisable thing to do in life, or when you're predicting boxing matches. But I just got a feeling Zurdo might catch Billam Smith with something late, and Chris, because he's put so much into gaining that lead for the first 2/3 or 3/4 of the fight, I think he might be a little bit fatigued. And Zurdo, I think I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think Zurdo stops Chris in about 11 rounds, 10, 11 rounds. That's sort of, last quarter of the fight anyway. But I don't say that with any confidence whatsoever. None at all. So, let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? If you do agree with me, tell me why. Because I don't even really know why I've picked Zurdo. Do we? Not really. It's one of those fights where you can see different scenarios. They've got different styles, different stances, obviously. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you're picking. And yeah, please, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. Build up the channel and all that. You know the drill, don't you? Thank you very much. I always appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to reading your comments. It's going to be a good one, I think this might be a bit of a sleeper. This might be a very, very good fight indeed. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time. Much love and bye for now.